Today, me and Lee are going to be discussing what it takes to write your first ever Warhammer 40,000 army list.
Yep. And it's a minefield. Coming from someone who's played for a couple of years now, well, competitively, there's so much anxiety and you put so much pressure on yourself because you want to perform well. You don't know who you're going to play against. And, you want to try and make the best list possible. But the best piece of advice that I can say before we talk about pros and cons and how advice is, you've got to expect that your list isn't going to perform well into everything unless you get really good matchups. But let's pass it on to Steve. Where do you even start by building a list for the first time?
Well, I mean, that's exactly it. I think you started to touch on the anxiety you might get as a competitive tournament player. And I think no matter what level you're at, you still have it.
100%.
And I think that is something in which you get more experienced with. So let's get it right down to the very beginning. Now, you've probably chosen a faction. We're going to assume you've chosen a faction because you like the look of them.
Yeah.
There's something that's really drawn you in about that faction. And maybe you've got some models already. Maybe you've just went to the store, you bought some models. And we're going to start from exactly that point. Yeah. How do we build on from there? How do we utilize what you've got and add in extra things? And the goal of writing an army list, I think, is making sure that it's balanced.
100%. There's a few ways to look at it as well, though. Are we saying this is your first ever list to play?
Yep.
Because then you can only play with what you've got.
Yep.
Or are we saying this is your first ever competitive list?
Okay, so more like an optimized list.
Okay.
Maybe like a list for the future.
Yeah.
So it's like here's the list I would love to take maybe to my local club to play against my friend, or maybe even take to a tournament. So it's a list that we're going to build towards.
Yeah.
And when we talk about balance of a list, we need to make sure that it's got a few different factors.
Yeah.
The first one is that it's able to hold objectives.
100%.
So that allows you to score primary points.
Yeah.
The next thing it needs to do is be able to score consistently secondary mission cards. And that's going to help you score, obviously, those secondary points.
Absolutely.
You need some units that are going to be able to deal with lots and lots of models.
Yeah.
So maybe you're up against a type of horde army. The next type is elite infantry.
Yep.
So kind of the middle of the road.
Yeah, it's that kind of stuff.
Yeah, a few wounds each, good armor saves, good little bit of toughness, and a few of those. And then finally, big horrible monsters and tanks.
Yeah.
You need to be able to deal with those three different types of units, score those different types of points, and then an add-on to that is, this is like maybe an advanced level, but how do you then deny your opponent from scoring primary points? You can't really deny somebody's scoring of secondaries, but you can deny their points in regards to holding objectives on certain missions.
Yeah.
So I think if we can focus on those 6 factors.
Yes, and I think you can, if you're at an advanced level, you can deny your opponent their secondaries.
It's hard to build a list for it though.
Yeah. Well, yes and no.
Okay. Go on. Go on. Give me an example.
For example.
Yep.
Tiffany player. I will always start a lictor 9 inches or 6 inches from the centre in cover, just in case my opponent pulls out.
Okay, yeah, I can see that, yeah.
That there now
forces them to have to come and kill you. Yeah.
I put in my list 20 gaunts. If they call the horde first turn, gutted for you, you can score it.
It's really hard.
It's really hard.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, there are certain factions that just don't have the ability to do that, units. Yeah. So I think, I'm not going to disagree with you. It can definitely be done. I just think
this is more.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
But I like where your head's at with that, and it's good that we're able to discuss those things and take things to a good level like that. So let's focus on, maybe you want to, and there's nothing wrong with this, writing a list around a character that you absolutely love.
No, yeah.
I think we've all got our favourites of different factions. When it's Black Templars, for me, it's the Emperor's Champion. He's always been my favourite model. So every list I write, he just goes in. He's like what I call a non-negotiable.
Mhm.
You know, I'm not going to play that army unless I'm taking him.
Absolutely. And there's a few ways where we call it auto includes. It could be because you might just love the character's look or the lore behind it, but there's also characters that you include based off the ability it gives your army.
Yeah.
Like the Neuro Tyrant, for example, with the
Yeah, like the play style of that particular
Exactly, yeah.
model or character. So yeah, you can have your own non-negotiables for whatever reason, and if you have any, don't feel like you have to take them out because it's not the competitive choice. You will be able to work around that, and obviously you can't take every single character, so you are going to have to make some sort of, you know, like hard nose at some point.
Yeah.
And I often look at units in different ways. Like what is, like you said, an auto include. And for me, that is an auto include is a unit that does one of those 6 things that we spoke about earlier to the most efficient degree.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a non-negotiable. Then you've got kind of the would like to haves. So these are good units. You want to have them in your list. All right.
Yeah.
And then you've got those units that are either just filling out points because they're just the best thing with what you've got left of points. Or maybe they're just like a, you know, and then finally you might just include some stuff because maybe they're just the only models you have accessible. And that's absolutely fine as well. We can still find a utility for them, and we just need to assign a role of one of those 6 things ideally. And sometimes, like, the more expensive the unit, you're kind of hoping it's going to do more than one thing.
Normally the just got more damage or got a better ability or a nice buff or support your army. Well, you'd hope anyway.
Let's take Angron, for example.
Yeah.
He can deny our opponent primary because he can just charge onto an objective and kill anything that's on it.
Deletes.
He can kill big things.
Yeah.
He could kill elite things.
Easily.
And he can kill lots of little things.
He decimates, yeah, pretty much, yeah.
And if he doesn't die, he could even hold an objective for you.
Oh,
So
he'll come back.
and if he does die, he can come back. Yeah. So he's a lot of points, but worth it when played well.
Things, yeah.
When played poorly, he's not going to do any of those 5 things for you because you're going to end up, you know, doing the wrong thing with him. And I think it's very easy to say, oh, well, obviously, yeah, if you try and do a secondary objective with him, it's a bad thing to do. It's not his intended purpose. But I often see people make that same mistake in their list. They're not assigning roles to their units, okay?
Absolutely.
So that is one consideration. So let's say we take, I don't know, a typical list. We want to be able to then refine those different elements. And some armies are very much one dimension, you know, as the extreme. Tau on one end, World Eaters on the other.
Exactly, yeah.
They only operate in one phase of the game.
Yeah.
So sometimes you want to bring in different ways as well when you're writing your army list to how can you deal damage outside of that one phase?
Yeah.
Is it mortal wounds from throwing a grenade? Is it a tank shock?
Yeah.
Is it maybe you can move over the unit and do some damage? You know, just some other way to mitigate that one phase that you operate in.
It's the great way. That's a good reason of why we always stick to a balanced list, in my opinion, because if you have a one-dimensional play style, just because you have a one-dimensional play style doesn't mean you still can't build a balanced list.
100%, yeah.
So like it just means you don't perform as well in one phase.
Yeah.
So for example, if going with World Eaters, if you take Angron and you've got loads of 8-bound, you've got speed, and your opponent comes against this, but they don't have anything to kill Angron, they're going to be in a very sticky situation. They might have loads of OC, they might have loads of gun line, but coming against an army which is infantry based with no Angron, that's really fast, or they can't kill Angron, then your gun line is now basically worthless because you've got no targets. So for me, there's 2 ways you can do it. Build balanced and just hope you get good matchups, or you really play into the army factions play style.
And you should 100% do that. Really maximize what that army's trying to do.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not suggesting you should probably take, you know, like shooting units in a World Eaters army.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to suggest that. What I am trying to suggest is if you can bring in those, you know, other units like, oh, actually, being able to throw a grenade might be quite helpful at times, like situationally good, can be quite useful. But I think getting to the point of where do we actually write the army list from a balanced perspective, I normally try to think about, okay, what is holding my home field objective? What unit am I going to assign to that? Because that home field objective should pretty much guarantee me 20-ish,
15 to 20 points.
15 to
easily,
20 points. And then maybe, depending on the cards I draw, it might score me some others, like extend battle lines or defend stronghold.
Yeah.
It's got the potential to score some more. So how much am I going to invest on a unit to do that job? And that is a very good question, because it very much will depend on the opponent you play. So I normally have a couple of units that I can change up. You know, am I going to put a very, very cheap unit on it, like 30 to 50 points, and hope they don't have any indirect, hope they don't have any deep strike, hope that they can't drop in within, you know, like 6 inches or something, or can't interact with this unit at all. I can block them from getting to me. If so, yeah, that 30-point unit or 40-point unit is perfect. However, if they do have some deep strike, if they do have some indirect fire, if they do have some extremely fast melee units that can fly and get to me, then I'm going to have to, you know, stick a little bit more down.
You might have to drop some battle line further back, or
Yeah.
maybe, you know, set up a tank in deployment just to screen out further.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of having a balanced list, because if you play one-dimensional and you only take one kind of play style,
Yeah.
then you don't have the assets to do that. Like, if you run World Eaters, let's say, with no Jackals, and you just go full 8-bound, you don't want 310 points of 8-bound sitting in your home field.
No, exactly.
I mean,
yeah. No, I completely agree with that. So you've got that one roll, what's going to sit on your home field? Okay, so next what I do then is I think about, okay, well, I need some damage dealing units. And I know that this will soak up a lot of the points of the army. And this is probably going to dictate around 60 to 70% of the army's points. And what I'm going to focus on is, what units do I need? I'm going to look at their abilities, and I'm going to look at any sort of stratagems that might amplify that ability, and I'm going to assign them a role. Is this my, you know, big killing thing unit? Is this my small little, okay, if they've got 5 Space Marines, how am I going to deal with that? Like a MSU, which means small multiple units. You know, how am I going to go deal with those without expending a huge unit, right? So how can I trade with it on an equal level? So I'm going to assign these little roles as I put my units down in my head, or sometimes what's even better is to maybe use post-it notes if you don't have the models, or get the models out on a table. And then assign post-it notes to the roles that you're going to do. And then what I would do from the back of that then is use characters to amplify the effects of those units. So characters normally have like a leading ability. What unit am I going to, or what leader am I going to have with that unit to ensure that it can maximize either its capacity, or
durability,
or mitigate some of the weaknesses. So, oh, this unit really needs to get into combat. What's a weakness? Fail in my charge. So I might take a character that gives me reroll charges. So it mitigates one of the potential weaknesses of that unit. And then I'm going to look at what I'm left with. Hopefully I've got 5 to 6 units, maybe a couple that can deal with, you know, the Horde, a couple that can deal with the Elite Infantry MSU, and a couple that can, you know, deal with any big stuff. All right. And then after that, I'm going to go, right, well, what am I left with? Maybe a scouting unit could be really good. Maybe a unit that can infiltrate could be nice, because both of those elements can help me either defend my army or screen out the board, or they could score me points. Or maybe they could get onto a middle objective nice and early and force my opponent to start to bring their army towards me. Force them to start to trade, where I can then counterattack and get back onto those objectives. And then we should have roughly a pretty good, well-rounded army list.
You've got things that can designate into doing actions, you've got things that's holding, you've got things that are killing. And with the assignment of each role, it just makes your play style and overall stress of the game less, because you know that whatever happens, whatever card you pull, you know that that's going to try and do that. And if you're in a position where you've lost that unit, because you've got balance, you've got other units that can
redundancy
fill in. But that also now goes against you as well, because if you don't play, we're not saying you have to play balance, we're saying that if you go into your first tournament and you want to have some success, balance is probably the best way. And a bad example of this is basically what I'm getting at is, if you have an army where you go, right, I want to go mass damage and I want to bring, say, 6 tanks and some transport, you're now playing into your opponent to easily score against you if they want to go and bring it down as a secondary. So there's that.
Yeah, and there definitely can be those like glaring sort of dynamics when you take an army that's particularly skewed or heavily built one way. And I think what's really nice about a beginner army being nice and balanced is that it can teach you things like, okay, so how many units do I need to actually score the cards? Well, in what you can do basically as well is, whilst you're writing your army list, this is maybe a bit more of an advanced thing, but go through the cards. There's 18 of them. And go through them and just go, right, what's the first card? Area denial. What would I do if I drew that turn 1? Oh, I got a scouting unit. Now, providing that I deploy that in the center of the table, it can move forward, scout move, and get within 3 inches of the center of the table to get me area denial. What's the next card? Oh, it's cleanse. I need to do that on 2 objectives. So maybe 1 scouting unit isn't enough. Maybe I need 2. Because then turn 1, I can scout move. And then, or I can either have a scout moving unit that moves onto an objective, or maybe I have a fast unit, like a unit of 2 little bikes or something, or a 5-man team with jump pack that can just move nice and quickly and do it as well.
If you get first turn and you've got 2 skating units and you pull cleanse and area denial first turn, then you are one lucky mofo.
You are laughing, aren't you?
You are laughing, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can just scout move up, you're already there, you're in position. They're small, cheap trading pieces, and you've just scored, what, 9 points?
Yeah, good chunk of points there.
Indeed.
Same for containment. You need 2 edges covered, but you can't use the same scouting unit that you're going to use in the middle of the table because containment is on the edges. So now you need 2 other units.
Yeah.
And this is where you can start to think about, okay, well, how many units do I feasibly need to be able to score every combo a card, but still maintain a good amount of chunk of damage? And then once you've, hypothesized and you've assigned your roles in, I would say, once you're comfortable with the list, and this is what we teach you very much in a lot more detail on the Academy, is go away with it, have some practice games, and then see if your hypotheses matches how you actually play with those units. You might find that those units just aren't your playstyle. Is any that you've used recently that you think, I just can't get on with that unit?
Zoanthropes, I think. When I
Zoanthropes?
was talking about it, like, I like running 6, and then I've changed to running 3 of them with a Neurotyrant. And now I've taken it down to from 6 to 3. I'm like,
what's the point?
What's the point in having 3? I might as well just have some more units. Because even though I have 3 Zoanthropes and the Neurotyrant, even though it's 2 units on paper, it's only 1. So I'm thinking now, is it better to have the Neurotyrant and then bring another 2 units, because then I've got more trading pieces, more things to maybe move, like gargoyles. So that's where my head's going.
Yeah, and I've made the same sort of things with the Custodes armies that I've been playing. I've been trying to make the Wardens work, and I can't.
No.
They're just not working for me. And what I found is another unit, just the Guard, the Custodian Guard, they're a little bit cheaper, and they fit my playstyle a lot better. I'm not just throwing them out there hoping they're going to survive on a 4+ feel no pain. I'm actually using them much more defensively, hiding, moving out, and that's much more my playstyle. That suits me a lot better. And there's nothing wrong with trying a unit out and realizing this just isn't for me, and pivoting to a slightly different unit that you just feels more comfortable when you play it.
Well, that's the thing, because there's not necessarily just the factions playstyle, but there's a player playstyle as well. Some people prefer going first. Some people prefer going second because they like to react. So if you are a player that goes first and you don't have the units to do what you want to do, then you're in a bad day. But if you are a player that likes to react, you can build your list based on, okay, well, if my opponent goes first and he shows me things, now I can react to that and react with this unit. And I've just been sitting here thinking as you've been talking, and I think I know what the most balanced army is at the box straight away.
Go on.
Knights, Imperial Knights. And
really?
Yeah, I think they're the most balanced. And the reason why I say that is because they're all OC 8 on their War Dogs.
Okay, so good OC,
Yeah, they've got OC. They've got Havoc launchers with blast for infantry. They've got melters, and they can fight in combat. And like, they might not be the easiest to play, but I feel in terms of
Their capabilities.
the capabilities of what they offer, OC, damage dealing, and they can deal with infantry and vehicles.
And they're also fast enough to move to all the objectives.
They'll move 12 or 14 if you've got the...
Yeah, and I think they're priced at a place where you can afford to do an action with them.
140 points for the cheapest one, yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes those actions mean you have to survive as well, and they've got a good level of like survivability baked in.
Because
I've never looked at them in that way.
No, I haven't until we was talking about it just. I was like, what would be the most balanced army? And I think out the box, it's got to be a Knights.
So what you're thinking is lots of War Dogs rather than the big ones, though?
Even if you just have one big one and multiple. Because I think you can build 13 War Dogs in a list.
Something like that, yeah.
140 points or 165, depending on the variation you take, yeah. So then, if you then dedicate 3 of them to holding points, that's 8 OC right there, each body. And just because they're on the point doesn't mean they can't still shoot or charge onto an objective and do some damage.
Yeah.
So that means you've got 10 left. So let's say you go first and you pull containment and extend battle lines. You only need to do 2 corner edges with something that moves 14 inches. That's OC 8.
And also, you raise a good point, because often if you go first and you draw containment, you probably find that your opponent's hiding anyway, so you can't probably shoot.
Well,
so you can just...
Oh, you can. Because I've come against Knights before and they've got like, oh, I've got 13, and then they've all got indirect Havoc launchers.
Sure, but do you know what I mean? There's not those clear firing lanes for those main guns.
Oh, yeah.
So you're not really feeling like you're wasting too much. You're just like, okay, I'm missing a Havoc launcher or whatever. All right, I don't disagree with you. I can see your logic, yeah.
Because even if you use... Because what I don't like doing is, like again, going to World Eaters or even Tyranids. If you don't have the units, or you're late game and you've lost some battle line, and you're then forced now to do a containment or an action with a damage dealer or a big monster, it's frustrating because you might pull something like containment and no prisoners. Now you're thinking, like, oh, well, my Hive Tyrant or my Mouse Scepter or my 8-bound are set up to do containment, but I really need them to get rid of that squad as well.
Yeah.
But with the Knights, because there's 13 of them, 2 of them do actions, the rest of them absolutely decimate your army.
Yeah, they can put the pressure on you.
And yeah,
all right.
Enough that's why I'm thinking that a Knight army.
But they're not balanced in regards to how they necessarily interact with your opponent, because they're all big and durable.
Yeah.
It means that if your opponent's got a huge... So what you're talking about is the balance of how that faction's going to play itself.
In terms of what we were saying about what you need.
Yes. Yeah.
But in terms of durability, they are quite durable. They've got 5 Unvenables there, the T10 or T12, or some case T13.
Yeah.
Their maneuverability, if you play Chaos Knights, they can go straight through walls, 2 of them.
Yeah.
So they have all those little tricks. It's just the fact that...
yeah. Obviously, we got to look at it from the lens of, and what I like what you've done there is you've gone, right, straight out of the box, this could be a good balanced army to start with. But
whatever unit you choose, like a War Dog or a big one, it can deal with anything in the game. That's how I'm coming at it.
No, I see you, yeah.
You can sit on an objective and be OC 8 or 10.
So what you're saying as well then is that because you've got lots of the same things as well, it's easy, I think, from a decision fatigue perspective, because you're like, well, I'll just move that one to do this, but I've got 5 others to do what I need it to do. And you've got the tools for most things, but actually how you deal with one of those units is a combined approach, right? So you might need a few of your War Dogs to open up a firing lane, or a couple of models to go and in charge a bigger unit in combat. But so what I like as well there is very easy to identify. You got these 12 or 13 models, 3 are going to sit on objectives. Maybe you're going to have a couple on objectives, you know, in case you lose one. And that's where you're building in that, you know, redundancy as well. And I think when it comes to scoring the cards in a more maybe traditional army like Space Marines or Tyranids or whatever, you can have these 3 to 4 dedicated scouty, infiltratey, fast, small little units to go and do stuff for you. We call them action monkeys, all right? That's exactly what their job is. They're to do actions for you. Because remember, the rest of your force, like when I'm playing my Custodes, I don't have much Action Monkey units. Every model is expensive.
Yeah.
You know, they are like a 50-point model, not 50-point unit model. Now, when I draw an action card, I'm like, oh no, because I now need to sacrifice a 200-point unit to do this action. So I need to take the optimal amount of those little Action Monkey units to help me do that. But then the other units that are maybe just moving up into position need to be in a place where they can do those actions that need to survive. So maybe they need to be on an objective, be on a terrain feature. So they're doing their job, they're moving up the table, but they can also do an action as they do it as well. And this is where I think transports are really underrated. Transports that you're not worried about shooting them, you're just going to use them to get your army up the table, but also do actions along the way, and then just be quite annoying later on in the game when your opponent's lost a lot of their assets that can deal with the anti-tank. These things can just move and charge and tie stuff up and tag it, or just sit on objectives for you.
What I like doing is, and this is some like technique here now, there's some situations on
Lee's secret sauce.
Secret sauce. So having a rhino filled with like 10 hard-hitting melee units that may be quite slow, like Death Guard or something, having them behind the wall in your L-shaped terrain on your UKTC, it means you can get out free.
Yeah.
So you clear that wall, then you move.
Yeah.
And now you've had that extra movement from that disembark to get onto an objective that you might not have done with just normal movement. And now you've got a vehicle that can screen out backfield from deep strikes and stuff.
Do you know what I also like? Can I add a little bit extra sauce onto your sauce?
With the sauce, add the gravy.
So what I like to do is I always take transports that have 2 units assigned to go in it.
Okay.
So now what I can do is I can move a unit up, and it can be in a position where on the minimum advance roll that I need to make, which is a 1, right? I'm going to ensure that no matter what I roll, my models will all end within 3 inches of that transport in the middle. So it means I can leave a unit completely untouched, nice behind terrain, screening out my backfield, maybe doing a cheeky action. Who knows what they're up to?
Yeah.
But I'm going to ensure that that terrain feature, that rhino or transport that's in the middle of the board is always within, if it's, for example, my base move is 6, a 1-inch advance, that gets me 7. So I'm going to make sure every model is within 10. And then it means it's super easy then when my unit gets out and moves and charges, I've got another unit that fills its place.
Yeah.
So that is a Steve Lee secret sauce.
Steve Lee secret sauce with gravy on top, yeah.
I like it.
No,
yeah, nice. So anyway, I think we've covered the basics. So to recap, you need something to hold objectives. You need something to score your secondary points. You need to be able to deal with lots of little gribblies. You need to be able to deal with those MSU elite infantry models. You need to be able to deal with big, horrible monsters and vehicles. And then hopefully some way to deny your opponent their primary points. And then if you're likely, maybe even go one step further and try and deny them some secondary points.
I think, especially in today's meta, I think speed kills. If you've got things that can get to objectives or get where you need to be fast, you can afford to make slight deployment mistakes, or the speed allows you to counteract something. So if you have areas on all, let's say, and then you move something like some gargoyles, which are 85 points, you don't want to send something expensive to die, you send them out, they've got areas on all, and then next turn, let's say you pull containment, you know, let's say it's you've now got 12-inch move where you can get from the middle to board edge to score again. And then you've got one unit that's doubled up to do multiple things. Yeah,
if they're not killed, then they're good to go for doing something else, which I completely agree with.
They probably will die because they're absolutely squishy, but
yeah,
let's just say just tanky dice.
Or maybe your opponent's too busy trying to kill your Maliceptors.
Yeah. But that's another thing as well. Like sometimes when you've got your unit choices, you could put out a squad of gargoyles and you know that you're scoring, let's say, containment, or you're holding an objective with them, and then you've got like other monsters, and then you're putting your opponent in a position where you're like, I need to kill that monster because he's going to kill me next turn. But if I don't kill them gargoyles, they're going to score me points.
Yeah.
So you're forced to kill the gargoyles to try and deny points. And they get melted next turn anyway.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's great. So there we go. If you're likely, take your gargoyles, But no, I like what you said about the knights being maybe a balanced army straight out of the box.
Oh, literally, yeah, it's the first time. I hate knights.
Yeah,
I
same.
do. I just absolutely
I'll
hate
be
them.
interested to hear people's thoughts back home. What do you think
Yeah.
is the most balanced army based on what we've said straight out of the box?
When I say hate, I mean like
You've got strong ill feeling.
hate them.
You really.
I just don't like them. For me, I don't like just having those like big. I
Yeah.
like to have like little like intricate
Well,
little like
the thing I hate most in the game is when vehicles explode,
yeah,
and when you've got 13 of them. And I like killing things in combat.
yeah.
When they explode on me, I don't like that. So
No,
that's why I hate
exactly,
them.
yeah.
Anyway, guys, yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts. If there is anything we've missed, I mean, I'm sure there's lots of things. You could go down to the minutiae of making sure you've got some units that can fly, some infantry, all different types of keywords to really mix it in there.
Okay, guys. So we just spoke about lists. I'd love to hear your opinions on it, and I'm actually going to set you guys a challenge. Drop a comment below, and based on the faction that you guys play, what is your non-negotiable unit?
What's the one you always take?
One unit that always makes it in your list.
Like I said, when I'm playing my Black Templars, it's the Emperor's Champion.
What is your gravy?
What's yours?
What's mine?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right, well, anyway, so hope you've enjoyed this show. We'll see you on the next one. And yeah, let us know your non-negotiables.